You don't own him, Mira. My sister stole my boyfriend. My family celebrated. So I moved on. The man I chose? My family's faces when they found out who he was. That's when everything exploded. Before we continue, if you believe family loyalty should mean something, hit that subscribe button for Ebony and Pearl stories. Because what happens next is going to test every boundary you thought existed. Min Jae and I lasted 10 months. Not quite a year, but long enough that I'd started building futures in my mind. Small ones at first, weekend getaways to Jeju Island, introducing him to my extended family back in Georgia. Then bigger ones involving shared studio apartments in Seoul and maybe eventually something more permanent. He was everything I thought I wanted. Polished where I was raw, ambitious in ways that made my freelance design career feel like a hobby by comparison. When he walked into a room, people straightened their ties. When I walked into a room, people asked if I was lost. We met at an art showcase in Gangnam, one of those rare moments where my digital installations had been featured alongside established Korean artists. He'd stood in front of my work for nearly 15 minutes, head tilted, studying every pixel. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, measured. "This is extraordinary. Who created this?" "Me," I'd answered, stunned that anyone cared enough to ask. "I'm Choi Min Jae." He extended his hand, and when I took it, something settled into place that had been floating loose my entire life. "Can I take you for coffee and learn about your process?" 2 coffees turned into dinner. A week later, we were texting daily. 6 months later, I was imagining a life I'd never dared to dream before. We took weekend trips to Busan, explored hidden art galleries in Hongdae, and stayed up late talking about building something meaningful together. He made me feel seen in ways I'd never experienced. My sister Jada met him at month 7. I brought him home for Sunday brunch, a Kellerman family tradition that involved too much food, too many opinions, and my mother's thinly veiled critiques about everyone's life choices. Jada had been late, naturally, sweeping in with her signature dramatic entrance, apologizing loudly while ensuring every eye landed on her new designer outfit. "You must be Min Jae," she'd purred, air kissing both his cheeks and lingering just a heartbeat too long. "Myra's told me absolutely everything about you." I watched them interact throughout brunch. Watched her laugh too brightly at his corporate anecdotes. Watched her fingers graze his forearm when she emphasized a point. Watched the way she repositioned her chair, angling herself toward him like a sunflower tracking light she didn't even need. Jada had always been the golden daughter, the confident one, the extroverted one, the one with the impressive corporate marketing position, the one who made our parents glow at charity dinners. I was the creative one, which was family code for, "We're worried she'll never own property." But that afternoon, watching her perform so desperately for my boyfriend's attention, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Jada wasn't confident. She was terrified. Terrified that if she wasn't the most captivating person in every space, she'd vanish completely. I felt sorry for her. That was my first mistake. The cracks started appearing slowly. Min Jae began canceling dates. "Family business emergency," he'd text, or "Father needs me at headquarters," or simply "Let's reschedule." Our conversations thinned out. The passionate discussions about art and business strategy, and what we wanted from life evaporated into transactional exchanges. "Can you order takeout? I'll be late. We'll talk this weekend." I convinced myself it was normal. Relationships evolved. The honeymoon phase ended. People got consumed by work. Simone, my best friend since college, wasn't buying it. "He's pulling away," she said over brunch one Saturday. "I've watched this pattern before. He's just stressed about the company transition." Girl, stress doesn't make you forget your girlfriend exists. She stabbed her avocado toast with unnecessary force. When was the last time he initiated an actual conversation? I couldn't remember. The breakup happened on a Wednesday evening. He arrived at my apartment, sat on the couch we'd picked out together at a boutique furniture store in Itaewon, and said, "I think we need to discuss where this relationship is heading." My stomach dropped. "Okay. I care about you deeply. You understand that, right?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "But I think we're pursuing different trajectories. You're focused on building your creative portfolio, and I'm trying to establish myself within my father's organization. Are you breaking up with me? I think we need space to evaluate what we genuinely want." "I know what I want. I want you. I need time." He stood, and I understood with crushing certainty that this had already been decided. This wasn't a conversation. It was a notification. I'm sorry. He left. I sat on our couch and stared at the city lights beyond my window for 4 hours before calling Simone. I'm getting in my car right now, she said immediately. Don't move. I didn't move. I just sat there watching the future I'd imagined dissolve like watercolor in rain. 6 weeks of silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. I buried myself in work, accepting every commission, every collaboration, every project that could fill the Min Jae-shaped void in my chest. Simone dragged me to wine nights and museum trips and kept repeating, "You're going to survive this," until I almost believed her. Jada stopped contacting me altogether during those weeks. No check-ins, no sisterly support. It was odd, but I was too numb to question it. Then came the Instagram notification. I was in bed, mindlessly scrolling before sleep when I saw it. A post from my cousin Shanice, tagged at a restaurant I recognized because Min Jae had taken me there for our 8-month anniversary. The photo showed a long table of family and friends, but my vision tunneled to 2 faces immediately. Min Jae and Jada sitting beside each other, his arm casually draped across the back of her chair, her head tilted toward him, laughing at something he'd said like they shared the world's most intimate secret. The caption read, "Family dinner vibes, red heart." My hands started trembling. I clicked to Jada's profile. There, posted 3 hours ago, was a photo of just the 2 of them. Same restaurant. Her hand resting on his chest. His smile wide, genuine, the smile I hadn't seen in months. Caption, "When you choose happiness, everything aligns." The comments overflowed with heart emojis and congratulations. "You two are stunning together. Power couple energy. Finally, someone who deserves you, Jada." Not one person mentioned that he'd been my boyfriend first. That this was a betrayal. That family loyalty should mean something. I called Jada. She answered on the 6th ring. "Hey, what's up? Are you dating Min Jae?" A pause. Then carefully, "You saw the post. Are you dating him?" "Look, I know this seems complicated." "Complicated? You're dating my ex-boyfriend. You two broke up. It's been over a month." Her voice took on that defensive edge I knew intimately. "We just connected. He reached out after you two ended things, and we started talking, and it felt right." "He reached out to you?" "We ran into each other at an event, and it doesn't matter how it started. The point is, you don't own him. You two are finished. You're my sister. And you're being dramatic. God, you always do this. Act like you're the only one allowed to have anything good." Her voice escalated. Maybe he wanted someone who actually celebrates his ambitions instead of making him feel guilty for prioritizing his career. The accusation landed like a physical blow. "I never." "I have to go. Min Jae and I have reservations." She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling reality tilt sideways. My sister had stolen my ex-boyfriend, and somehow in her twisted logic, I was the villain. I blocked Jada on every platform. I muted the family group chat. I withdrew into my work and my small apartment and the tiny controlled world where my sister's betrayal couldn't reach me. But what I didn't know then was that the universe wasn't finished with me yet. Because sometimes when everything falls apart, you discover something, or someone, you never saw coming. If you can't stand people like Jada who steal from their own family and gaslight you into thinking you're the problem, hit subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. Comment what time you're watching this, because only manipulators and backstabbers won't stand with Mira. Let me know you're on the right side. The weeks following my confrontation with Jada blurred together in a haze of work and deliberate isolation. I stopped checking social media. Stopped answering my mother's calls. Stopped pretending that family meant anything more than shared DNA and holiday obligations. I poured everything into my design work. Every commission became a refuge. Logos for startups, digital installations for corporate events, branding packages for small businesses. My portfolio grew. My bank account stabilized. My emotional state found a fragile equilibrium somewhere between functional and numb. Simone checked on me daily, sometimes just sitting in my apartment while I worked, her presence a quiet reminder that not everyone I loved had betrayed me. "You're surviving," she said one evening, watching me finalize mock-ups for a tech company's website. "That's enough for now." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Then came the email that would change everything. Subject: Invitation to Design Lead. Annual Choi Foundation Charity Gala. I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam. But something made me open it. The Choi Foundation was requesting my services for their annual charity gala, a high-profile event supporting arts education for underprivileged youth across Seoul. The pay was exceptional. The exposure, career-defining, and the venue was spectacular. A penthouse event space with floor-to-ceiling glass walls, white marble floors, and panoramic views of Seoul's glittering skyline. I accepted before I could overthink it. The first planning meeting was scheduled for the following week. I arrived early, portfolio in hand, mentally rehearsing my pitch. The event coordinator, a sharp woman named Mrs. Park, greeted me warmly and walked me through the space. Mr. Choi will want to approve the visual concepts personally, she explained. He's very particular about the foundation's image. Mr. Choi. Choi Dae-young, the foundation's chairman. My stomach dropped. Dae-young, Min Jae's father. Before I could process this information, the elevator doors opened, and he stepped into the space. Choi Dae-young was nothing like his son. Where Min Jae was polished and calculated, Dae-young exuded a different kind of power, understated, absolute, terrifying in its calmness. Silver hair swept back perfectly. A charcoal suit tailored with precision. Sharp features that could have been carved from stone. But his eyes, dark, observant, impossibly steady, held something I hadn't expected. Kindness. He crossed the room with measured steps, and Mrs. Park introduced us. Mr. Choi, this is Mira Kellerman, our lead designer. Ms. Kellerman. His voice was deep, controlled. He extended his hand, and when I took it, his grip was firm but not dominating. I recognize you. My heart hammered. You do. From my son's life. He released my hand, his expression unreadable. I owe you an apology. I blinked, confused. For what? Not for the relationship ending. That was between you and Min Jae. But for how you were treated. The disrespect. The humiliation. His gaze held mine. That was unacceptable. I stood frozen, unsure how to respond. No one in my family had acknowledged my pain. No one had apologized. And here was this man, this powerful, allegedly dangerous man, offering the validation I'd been starving for. Thank you, I managed quietly. He nodded once, then turned his attention to the event space. Mrs. Park tells me you have exceptional vision. Show me what you're thinking. For the next hour, I presented my concepts. Projection mapping across the glass walls, digital installations that would transform the space into an immersive art experience, lighting designs that would highlight the city skyline while keeping focus on the foundation's mission. Dae-young listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about symbolism, accessibility, and emotional impact. He didn't just want beautiful visuals. He wanted meaning, purpose, connection. You understand what this event represents, he said finally. Not just wealth on display, but transformation. Opportunity. That's rare. Art should open doors, I replied. Not just decorate rooms. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, perhaps, or recognition. I agree completely. As Mrs. Park escorted me out, Dae-young stopped me at the elevator. Ms. Kellerman, if you need anything during this process, resources, connections, clarity, contact me directly. He handed me a business card with a personal number handwritten on the back. I value genuine talent. You shouldn't have to fight for the respect you deserve. I clutched the card, overwhelmed. Thank you, Mr. Choi. Dae-young, he corrected gently. We'll be working closely together. Over the following weeks, our communication became consistent. What started as project updates evolved into deeper conversations. About creative vision, yes, but also about pressure, expectations, and the weight of disappointing people who claim to love you. Dae-young shared wisdom earned through decades of leadership, acknowledging mistakes he'd made with his own son, the distance he'd allowed to grow between ambition and humanity. I pushed Min Jae toward image instead of substance, he admitted during one late-night call. I taught him to value perception over integrity. That's my failure, not yours. His honesty was disarming. This man, rumored to control one of Korea's most powerful underground networks, whispered about in business circles with equal parts fear and respect, was nothing like the ruthless figure people described. He was thoughtful, grounded, present. His steadiness became an anchor in the chaos my life had become. Simone noticed the change. You're smiling again, she observed one evening. What's different? I'm just focused on good work, I deflected. But it was more than that. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt seen. Not as the girl who got dumped, not as the sister who got replaced, but as Mira. Someone with talent, perspective, and value. The gala preparations intensified. Dae-young and I met frequently, reviewing designs, discussing logistics, refining details. Our conversations extended beyond the project. He asked about my artistic influences, my childhood, my dreams before Min-jae. People began to notice. Mrs. Park's assistant whispered to event staff. Photographers at site visits lingered on us a beat too long. Online forums dedicated to Seoul's elite started speculating about Choi Dae-young's new interest. I tried to ignore it. This was professional, respectful, meaningful. But even I couldn't deny that something was forming between us. Something I hadn't looked for, hadn't expected, and definitely hadn't planned. Something that felt dangerously close to clarity in a life that had only known chaos. And as the gala date approached, I realized the rumors were just beginning. Because in Seoul's world of power and perception, nothing stays private for long. If you believe people deserve respect regardless of their circumstances, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories and comment, "Everyone deserves dignity." Because what happens next is going to shake everything. Only people like Jada who thrive on tearing others down won't stand with Mira. The gala was 3 weeks away when Jada and Min-jae went fully public. It started with a magazine feature, Seoul Society's Couples to Watch spread. There they were, photographed at some exclusive rooftop bar, Jada's hand possessively on Min-jae's shoulder, both of them dressed like they were auditioning for a luxury brand campaign. The article gushed about their perfect alignment, her marketing expertise, his business acumen, their natural chemistry, and shared vision for success. My mother texted me the link. No message. Just the article. As if I needed the reminder that Jada had won whatever twisted competition I hadn't known we were in. The family group chat I'd muted but couldn't bring myself to leave exploded with congratulations. Aunt Linda called them the ideal modern couple. Cousin Marcus posted about how Min-jae was finally with someone on his level. I stared at my phone, waiting for the familiar ache of betrayal. But all I felt was a distant numbness, like watching a storm through bulletproof glass. "You're handling this better than I expected," Simone said when I showed her the article. "I'm just tired of caring," I replied. And I meant it. The truth came 3 days later, during a late evening meeting with Dae-young at the penthouse venue. We were finalizing the projection mapping sequences when he asked, unexpectedly, "How are you managing the attention on Min-jae's relationship?" I shrugged, keeping my eyes on the tablet. "I'm not. I've moved on. Have you?" His voice was gentle, probing. "Or have you just gone numb?" I looked up, meeting his steady gaze. "Does it matter? The result is the same." Dae-young set down his coffee, his expression thoughtful. "Mira, there's something you should know about my son. About how his relationships," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "About how his decisions have been influenced. You don't owe me explanations about Min-jae." "Perhaps not. But you deserve truth." He leaned back against the glass wall, the city lights framing him like a portrait. Min-jae was pressured into what his mother's family calls image-building relationships. Partners who enhance social standing, who photograph well, who fit a particular mold. My chest tightened. And I didn't fit that mold. "You were too real," Dae-young said simply. "Too genuine, too focused on substance over status." His uncle saw you as a liability, a distraction from the trajectory they'd mapped for him. So he chose Jada because she's more marketable? He chose the path of least resistance. Dae-young's jaw tightened with what looked like disappointment. I tried to teach him differently. Tried to show him that integrity matters more than image. But I failed him in that regard. The revelation should have hurt more. Instead, it just made everything make sense. Min-jae's sudden distance, his vague excuses, the way he couldn't meet my eyes when he ended things. He didn't even have the courage to choose for himself, I said quietly. "No," Dae-young agreed. He didn't. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of that truth settling between us. Then Dae-young did something unexpected. He asked about my art, about what I'd wanted to create before I'd met Min-jae, before I'd let someone else's vision crowd out my own. And I told him. About the installation concepts I'd abandoned because they felt too personal, too vulnerable. About the fear that my work would never be taken seriously because I didn't have the right connections or pedigree. Vulnerability is where real art lives, De-Jong said. Everything else is just decoration. Our meetings became less about the gala and more about these conversations. About healing, about reclaiming pieces of ourselves we'd lost to other people's expectations. He shared stories about building his empire, about the mistakes that haunted him, about the loneliness that came with power. I shared fears I'd never voiced to anyone. About being invisible, replaceable, forgettable. You are none of those things, he said firmly. Anyone who failed to see your worth was simply not looking. The closeness didn't feel inappropriate. It felt necessary, like finding water after crossing a desert. But other people didn't see it that way. The photo was taken on a Tuesday evening. We were reviewing the final installation mock-ups on De-Jong's tablet, standing close together near the glass wall so he could point out specific elements. His hand was near my shoulder, guiding my attention to a particular design feature. Professional. Innocent. But the angle made it look intimate. My body turned toward his posture protective, the city lights creating an atmosphere that screamed romance rather than collaboration. Someone at the venue snapped the photo. By morning it was everywhere. Choi De-Jong's mystery woman revealed, ex-girlfriend of his own son. From son to father. Designer Mira Kellerman's shocking new romance. Gold digger or heartbroken? Mira Kellerman spotted with Mafia boss Choi De-Jong. The comments were vicious. People called me desperate, calculating, shameless. They accused me of using De-Jong for revenge, for money, for status. They painted me as a woman scorned, willing to destroy a family for my wounded pride. And then Jada posted. A simple Instagram story, no photo, just text on a black background. Some sisters have no limits. The implication was clear. I'd crossed an unforgivable line. I was the villain in a story she'd been writing since the moment she decided Min Jae was hers. My phone exploded with messages from family members demanding explanations, from strangers sending death threats, from gossip sites requesting interviews. I turned my phone off and sat in my apartment, feeling the walls close in. When I finally checked my messages hours later, there was one from De-Jong. Don't read the comments. Don't apologize for existing. I'm handling this. And he did. A press statement from the Choi Foundation. Ms. Kellerman is a respected professional collaborator whose artistic vision has been invaluable to our charitable mission. Any suggestions of impropriety are baseless and offensive. We will not tolerate harassment of our team members. It wasn't a denial of closeness. It was a refusal to justify our connection to people who'd already decided we were guilty. He called me that evening. Are you all right? I don't know, I admitted. Everything feels like it's burning down. Then let it burn, he said calmly. And we'll see what's left standing when the smoke clears. His certainty became my anchor. While the internet raged and my family whispered and Jada played the victim, De-Jong remained steady, defending me publicly, supporting me professionally, refusing to let anyone define what existed between us. For the first time in my life, someone was choosing to stand beside me when standing beside me cost something. And that meant more than any amount of public approval ever could. If you can't stand people who spread lies and tear others down to make themselves look better, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now and comment, truth over gossip. Because only manipulators like Jada won't stand with someone being unfairly attacked. Let me know you see through the lies. The summons came via my mother's voice message, clipped and cold. Your father and I expect you home tomorrow at 2 o'clock. This situation needs to be addressed. Immediately. Not a request. A command. Simone begged me not to go. They don't deserve your presence. They never defended you. I know, I said, pulling on my coat. But I need to say what I should have said months ago. On my terms. One last time. I arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. The moment I stepped through the door, I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was an ambush. My parents sat on the main couch like judges at a tribunal. Aunt Linda, Uncle Marcus, and Cousin Shanice occupied the surrounding chairs. And there, standing near the fireplace like they owned the room, were Jada and Min Jae. Jada wore her signature victimized expression. Wounded, betrayed, righteous. Min Jae looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Sit down, Mira, my father said, gesturing to the single chair they'd positioned in the center of the room. Isolated. On display. I remained standing. I'll stand, thanks. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. We need to discuss your behavior. This situation with Min Jae's father. Choi Dae-young, I corrected. His name is Choi Dae-young. You've been photographed with him, Aunt Linda interjected, voice dripping with scandal. In compromising positions. Do you understand how this looks? We were working, I said calmly. On a charity gala. Professionally. Professionals don't stand that close, Jada hissed. You're chasing an older man for money and status because you couldn't keep Min Jae. The room waited for my reaction. 4 tears, for anger, for the defensive scrambling they expected. Instead I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. You really believe that, don't you? I looked directly at Jada. You've rewritten the entire story in your head. Made yourself the hero. I'm not the one sleeping with my ex's father. I'm not sleeping with anyone, I cut her off. But let's talk about the actual betrayal in this room, since we're all here. The temperature dropped. I turned to face everyone. Jada started dating my ex-boyfriend, not a stranger, not someone I casually knew, but the man I loved, within weeks of our breakup. She pursued him while we were still together, flirted with him at family dinners, and then convinced herself she did nothing wrong. We fell in love, Jada started. You fell for the attention, I interrupted. Because you're so terrified of being anything less than the favorite that you'll take whatever I have just to prove you can. Jada's face flushed red. That's not. And Min Jae. I turned to him. You didn't choose Jada because you loved her. You chose her because she fit the image your family wanted. Because she was marketable. Because I was too real, too complicated, too inconvenient for whatever social climbing plan your uncles had mapped out. Min Jae's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. And all of you, I swept my gaze across my family, congratulated them, celebrated them, posted heart emojis and talked about how perfect they were together. Not one of you asked how I felt. Not one of you acknowledged that your daughter, your niece, your family member had been humiliated and replaced. You need to move on, my mother began. I have moved on, I said firmly. I found work that matters. I found people who respect me. I found clarity in the ruins you all helped create. And somehow, that's the problem? That I'm not crying anymore? That I'm not begging for your approval? You're making a fool of yourself with that man, my father said harshly. Choi Dae-young is dangerous. He's involved in. He's treated me with more respect in 2 months than this family has shown me in 2 decades, I said quietly. Whatever he is, whatever he's involved in, he's never made me feel small. He's never dismissed my pain. He's never chosen someone else's happiness over basic human decency. The room fell silent. I'm done justifying my existence to people who never valued it in the first place, I said, walking toward the door. Jada can have Min Jae. You can all celebrate their perfect, shallow, image-obsessed relationship. I'm building something real. If you walk out that door, my mother threatened. Then I walk out, I said simply. And you'll have to live with the fact that you chose gossip over your daughter. I left. No tears. No second guessing. Just the cleanest break I'd ever made. The next morning, I was making coffee when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Choi Dae-young standing in my hallway, perfectly composed in a dark suit, flanked by 2 silent men in equally sharp attire. Good morning, Mira, he said calmly. I'm heading to visit your family. I thought you should know. Dae-young, you don't have to. I do, he said simply. Disrespect has consequences. I learned what happened from Simone, who heard it from cousin Shanice, who'd been there. Dae-young arrived at my parents' home at exactly 10 o'clock. Formal. Polite. Terrifying. He'd sat in their living room, accepted tea, and spoken with a kind of quiet authority that made grown men remember their mortality. I'm here regarding Mira Kellerman, he'd said. I understand there was a family meeting yesterday. One in which she was treated with considerable disrespect. My father had tried to explain, to justify, to minimize. Dae-young had simply raised one hand, and the room fell silent. Mira is a woman of exceptional talent and character, he'd continued. She's been professional, creative, and gracious despite facing cruelty from people who should protect her. I'm here to make clear that her treatment is unacceptable. He hadn't threatened. Hadn't needed to. His presence alone, the weight of his reputation, the silent men standing behind him, the cold certainty in his voice, had communicated everything necessary. If I hear of any further disrespect, he'd said, standing to leave, There will be consequences. Do we understand each other? They'd understood perfectly. That evening, Min Jae showed up at Dae-young's office building. Security called ahead, but Dae-young agreed to see him. I wasn't there, but Dae-young told me later what happened. Min Jae had stormed in, furious and unraveling. "You take everything from me," he'd shouted. "Every opportunity, every accomplishment, every relationship. You overshadow all of it. And now you're taking Mira just to prove you can." Dae-young had remained seated, unmoved. "I haven't taken anything from you. I've simply recognized value you were too shallow to appreciate. You're doing this to humiliate me." "I'm doing this because Mira deserves respect," Dae-young had said firmly. "Something you failed to provide. You treat women like accessories. Things to enhance your image. That's not love. That's collection. And what are you doing? You're 25 years older than her." "I'm treating her like a human being," Dae-young had said, voice hardening. "I'm supporting her talent. I'm defending her dignity. I'm offering friendship without expectation. Can you say the same about anyone you've dated?" Min Jae had no answer. "You need to decide who you want to be," Dae-young had continued. "A man who builds substance, or a boy who chases image. But leave Mira out of your identity crisis." Min Jae had stormed out, Jada following close behind, her confidence finally cracking. "My life changed permanently after that day. My family stopped calling. The gossip reached a fever pitch, then slowly died. People moved on to newer scandals. But I remained standing, redefined, rebuilt, and finally free." The implosion of Jada and Min Jae's relationship was spectacular, public, and entirely predictable. It started with jealousy. Jada couldn't stop obsessing over the photo of Dae-young and me, couldn't accept that Min Jae's father had chosen to defend me instead of condemning me. Every conversation between them apparently devolved into accusations, her insisting he still had feelings for me, him resenting her constant need for validation and attention. Then came the insecurity. Min Jae, emasculated by his father's intervention and humiliated by the public nature of their conflict, started pulling away from Jada exactly the way he'd pulled away from me. Cancelled dates. Short responses. Emotional distance. Jada, desperate to hold on to what she'd stolen, became increasingly erratic. According to Simone's sources, because apparently the family gossip network still functioned perfectly, she'd shown up at Min Jae's office unannounced, called him at all hours, demanded he publicly defend their relationship against the lies about me and Dae-young. The final explosion happened at a corporate dinner. Jada had accused Min Jae of using her to get back at his father. Min Jae had accused Jada of only wanting him because he belonged to someone else. They'd screamed at each other in front of colleagues, family, and business associates, both claiming the other had betrayed them, both revealing the hollow foundation their relationship had been built on: competition, insecurity, and spite. It ended the same way it began. Ugly. Public. Karmic. I felt nothing when I heard. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just a distant sense of closure, like watching a chapter finish that I was no longer part of. My mother called 3 weeks after the confrontation. Not to apologize, never that, but to check in. "People are asking questions," she said carefully. "About the family. About everything." Translation: "We need damage control, and you're the key." "I'm not interested in helping the family save face," I said calmly. "Mira, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I'm choosing peace over performance. You should try it." I hung up before she could respond. My father sent an email shortly after. Formal. Distant. Suggesting family counseling and moving past this difficult season. I deleted it. Aunt Linda left a voicemail about forgiveness and healing. I blocked her number. They wanted reconciliation on their terms, one where I absorbed the blame, accepted their narrative, and pretended the betrayal hadn't happened. But I was done shrinking myself to fit into their comfort zones. The charity gala was a triumph. My installations transformed the penthouse space into an immersive experience that left guests speechless. The projections danced across glass walls, the digital art shifted with the music, and the entire event felt less like a fundraiser and more like stepping into a living, breathing artwork. Dae-young found me near the end of the evening, standing by the windows, watching the city lights blur with exhaustion and satisfaction. "You created something extraordinary," he said quietly. "We created it. I corrected. You trusted my vision. I trusted you, he said simply. There's a difference. He extended another opportunity. Leading the visual design for a new cultural center the Choi Foundation was launching. A permanent installation. A legacy project. Full creative control. I don't want you to feel pressured, he added. But I believe in what you create. And I think you deserve a platform that matches your talent. I accepted without hesitation. Over the following months, we worked together frequently. Professionally. Respectfully. He never crossed boundaries, never made assumptions, never treated our connection as anything other than what it was. Two people who'd found understanding in unexpected circumstances. He became a mentor, an advocate, and eventually, a friend. Not a replacement for what I'd lost, but something entirely new. Something built on mutual respect rather than need. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in a soul gallery at my first solo exhibition. The walls displayed my most personal work, digital installations exploring identity, betrayal, transformation, and reclamation. Pieces I'd been too afraid to show when I was with Min Jae, too vulnerable to create when I was drowning in family expectations. Now they existed in the world, unapologetic and raw. The gallery was filled with strangers, critics, collectors, and a few carefully selected friends. Simone stood near the entrance, beaming with pride. Mrs. Park from the foundation had come with several colleagues. And near the back, deliberately unobtrusive, stood Choi Dae-young. He didn't approach me during the opening. Didn't draw attention to himself. Just observed quietly, offering a single nod of approval when our eyes met across the room. He wasn't there as a rescuer or a romantic interest or a statement. He was there as what he'd always been. Someone who saw my worth when I'd forgotten it existed. After the last guests filtered out, I stood alone in the gallery, looking at my work illuminated against white walls. These pieces represented everything I'd survived. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the family rupture, the public humiliation. But they also represented everything I'd become. Someone who no longer measured her value by others' approval. Someone who created from authenticity rather than fear. Someone who understood that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest gift, because it meant you could build yourself exactly as you wanted, without the weight of others'